February 26, 1991. 73 Easting, Kuwait-Iraq border. Captain H.R. McMaster commanded Eagle Troop, 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment, 9 M1A1 Abrams tanks advancing through a sandstorm that reduced visibility to less than 1,000 meters. At 4:18 p.m., his gunner called out contact. Iraqi armor detected at 3,200 meters. McMaster's thermal imaging sight cut through the sandstorm, revealing the heat signatures of T-72 tanks in hull-down defensive positions. Fire. The 120mm smoothbore gun roared. 3 seconds later, at 3,200 meters, an Iraqi T-72 exploded as a depleted uranium penetrator punched through its turret armor and detonated the ammunition carousel inside. The turret separated from the hull and flew 30 feet into the air, the catastrophic kill signature that American tank crews would see repeatedly over the next 4 hours. The Iraqi crew never saw the M1 Abrams that killed them. Their optical sights, designed for daylight visual engagement, were useless in the sandstorm. The thermal signature of McMaster's tank was invisible at that range. They died before understanding they were under attack. What followed was the most one-sided armored battle in modern warfare. The Battle of 73 Easting demonstrated American tank superiority, so overwhelming that Iraqi crews, battle-hardened from 8 years fighting Iran, abandoned their vehicles and fled rather than face M1 Abrams tanks they couldn't see, couldn't hit, and couldn't defeat. Iraq's Republican Guard entered the Gulf War with supreme confidence in their armored forces. The elite Tawakalna, Medina, and Hammurabi divisions fielded 5,700 tanks, including T-72M export variants, T-62s, and upgraded T-55s. These units had fought through 8 years of brutal combat during the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988, gaining experience Soviet tank crews had never achieved. Iraqi tank commanders knew Soviet doctrine, knew their T-72s, and knew how to fight defensively in desert terrain. The T-72M, the export variant provided to Iraq, represented late Soviet tank design philosophy. The 120mm smoothbore gun fired armor-piercing, fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds capable of penetrating 450mm of armor at 2,000 meters, sufficient to defeat most NATO tanks of the 1970s. Composite armor layered with steel and ceramics provided protection against contemporary anti-tank weapons. The 780 horsepower diesel engine could push the 41-ton tank to 37 miles per hour on roads. An automatic loader replaced 1 crew member, reducing the crew to 3: commander, gunner, and driver. Iraqi defensive doctrine emphasized hull-down positions, where only the tank's turret was exposed, maximizing armor protection while maintaining fields of fire. Republican Guard units established defensive lines across southern Kuwait and Iraq, occupying berms and prepared positions with overlapping sectors of fire. Let the Americans come to them. Force coalition armor to advance across open desert into killing zones where T-72 guns could engage at maximum effective range of 1,800 to 2,000 meters. Saddam Hussein's military advisors, many trained by Soviet instructors, believed American forces were technologically superior but lacked stomach for casualties. American tanks might be better, but the M1 Abrams had never faced combat. Iraqi armor was proven. Their crews had fought and survived 8 years against Iranian armor and infantry. Soviet-trained Iraqi officers studied American doctrine and concluded that US forces would advance cautiously, allowing Iraqi defenders to inflict casualties until American public opinion forced withdrawal. The defensive positions would work. The T-72s would perform. American resolve would break. What Iraqi intelligence did not know was that American tank development over the previous 15 years had created a weapon system that operated in a different technological generation. The M1A1 Abrams, the variant deployed to Desert Storm, incorporated revolutionary systems that rendered Soviet tank design philosophy obsolete. The 120mm smoothbore gun, based on the German Rheinmetall design, fired M829 armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds, These projectiles consisted of a depleted uranium penetrator, a long, dense metal dart encased in a discarding sabot that fell away after leaving the barrel. Depleted uranium, 1.7 times denser than lead, punched through armor by kinetic energy rather than explosive force. The penetrator achieved muzzle velocity exceeding 5,000 feet per second. At 2,000 meters, it could penetrate over 600 millimeters of armor, far exceeding T-72 protection levels. The uranium also pyrophoric, meaning it ignited on impact, creating devastating effects inside enemy tanks as burning metal particles ignited fuel, ammunition, and crew. But the gun was only one element. The real revolution was the fire control system. The M1A1's thermal imaging sight, manufactured by Hughes Aircraft, detected infrared radiation, heat signatures, rather than visible light. Every object above absolute zero emits infrared radiation. Tanks, with their engines and moving parts, emit enormous heat signatures. The thermal sight converted these signatures into visual images displayed to the gunner and commander. This meant M1 crews could see enemy tanks in total darkness, through smoke, through fog, through sandstorms, any conditions that defeated optical sights. Iraqi T-72s relied on optical sights and infrared searchlights for night operations. The optical sights required visible light, making them useless in darkness, storms, or smoke. The infrared searchlights, intended to illuminate targets at night, actually announced the T-72's position to anyone with thermal detection, while providing the T-72 crew only limited visibility. Iraqi tanks were effectively blind in any degraded visual environment. American tanks saw clearly in all conditions. The fire control computer integrated multiple sensors, laser rangefinder providing instant accurate range to target, crosswind sensor, barrel temperature sensor, ammunition type selector, and vehicle motion sensors. When the gunner placed crosshairs on target and lased, the computer received exact range, calculated trajectory, accounting for ammunition ballistics, wind, barrel temperature, and vehicle motion, then adjusted the gun to the precise elevation and lead required. First round hit probability at 2,000 meters exceeded 90%. Iraqi T-72s required manual range estimation, manual calculation of lead and elevation, and multiple ranging shots to achieve hits, luxuries they wouldn't have time for against M1 Abrams. The gun stabilization system allowed accurate firing while moving at over 30 miles per hour. Gyroscopic sensors detected vehicle motion and automatically adjusted the gun to maintain aim point. American tank crews trained to shoot on the move, firing accurately while maneuvering at high speed. Soviet tank doctrine assumed tanks would stop to fire. Moving shots were too inaccurate. This gave M1 Abrams the capability to advance while shooting, reducing enemy accuracy while maintaining American firepower. Iraqi crews, trained on Soviet doctrine, would stop their T-72s to fire, making themselves stationary targets for American gunners. The armor protection used Chobham composite armor, developed in Britain and licensed to the United States. The exact composition remained classified, but the system layered ceramics, depleted uranium, and steel in configurations that disrupted armor-piercing projectiles. When a T-72 round struck Chobham armor, the layered materials forced the penetrator to break apart and change direction rather than punching straight through. This made the M1's frontal armor effectively immune to T-72 guns at combat ranges. Iraqi rounds that hit M1 tanks typically bounced off or shattered without penetrating. The 1,500 horsepower Honeywell AGT 1500 gas turbine engine gave the 60-ton M1A1 a power-to-weight ratio superior to the lighter T-72. The tank could accelerate to 30 miles per hour in 7 seconds and maintain 42 miles per hour cross-country. The multi-fuel capability meant the turbine could burn diesel, kerosene, or jet fuel, critical in logistics. Soviet diesels required specific fuel grades. American tanks kept moving, while Iraqi T-72s, plagued by maintenance issues and fuel shortages, often sat immobile in their defensive positions. American crew training far exceeded Iraqi standards. M1 Abrams crews trained on sophisticated simulators, firing hundreds of virtual rounds before ever shooting live ammunition. Annual training included 300+ hours per crew member on gunnery, maintenance, and tactics. Iraqi crews, facing fuel shortages and maintenance difficulties, received minimal live-fire training. Many Republican Guard tank crews had perhaps 20 to 30 hours annual training, 1/10 the American standard. When the battle began, American experience advantages added to technological superiority. The ground war began on February 24, 1991, with coalition forces attacking Iraqi positions across Kuwait and southern Iraq. The 7th Corps, including 1st and 3rd Armored Divisions and 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment, swept through southern Iraq in a flanking maneuver designed to cut off Iraqi forces in Kuwait. Iraqi commanders, expecting a direct assault into Kuwait, found American armor attacking from unexpected directions. On February 26th, Eagle Troop, 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment, advancing as a screening force ahead of the main American armored divisions, encountered the Tawakalna Division Republican Guard in defensive positions near the 73 Easting Grid line. Captain McMaster's 9 M1A1 tanks, supported by Bradley fighting vehicles, detected Iraqi armor at extreme range through the sandstorm that had reduced visibility to less than 1,000 meters for optical sights. The Iraqi position was well prepared. T-72 tanks in hull-down berms, infantry in trenches, anti-tank missiles positioned for overlapping fire. Under normal circumstances, attacking into such a position would require artillery preparation, airstrikes, and careful coordination. But Captain McMaster had thermal sights that revealed every Iraqi vehicle, every trench, every defensive position as bright heat signatures against the cool desert sand. The Iraqis, with their optical sights, saw only swirling sand and couldn't detect the approaching American armor at all. At 3,200 meters, Eagle Troop opened fire. M1A1 guns roared, sending depleted uranium penetrators downrange at 5,000 feet per second. Iraqi T-72s exploded, turrets flying off as internal ammunition detonated. Iraqi crews scrambled to respond, but their optical sights showed only sandstorm. Some crews fired blindly in the direction they thought enemies might be. Their rounds fell short or sailed over American tanks that the Iraqis couldn't see. American tanks continued advancing, shooting accurately while moving at 25 miles per hour. Staff Sergeant Lawrence Fulcher's M1A1 engaged and destroyed 7 T-72 tanks in 8 minutes. Each engagement followed the same pattern. Thermal sight detected heat signature at 2,500 to 3,000 meters. Laser rangefinder confirmed exact distance. Fire control computer calculated firing solution. Gunner triggered 120mm gun. Depleted uranium penetrator struck target. 3 seconds later, catastrophic explosion followed as Iraqi ammunition cooked off. 7 shots, 7 kills. The Iraqi return fire consisted of desperate, unaimed salvos from crews who couldn't locate their attackers. The battle lasted 4 hours. When Eagle Troop and supporting units completed their advance, they had destroyed 37 T-72 tanks, 32 BMP infantry fighting vehicles, 16 trucks, and innumerable other vehicles. Iraqi casualties exceeded 600 killed or wounded. American casualties: 1 M2 Bradley damaged by friendly fire, 0 deaths, 0 M1 tanks, even hit by enemy fire. The technological disparity was so extreme that Iraqi survivors later reported they thought they were being attacked by aircraft or missiles. They never saw the American tanks that destroyed them. The following day, February 27th, produced an even more one-sided engagement. The 1st Armored Division encountered the Medina Division Republican Guard at what became known as the Battle of Medina Ridge. This time, visibility was better, no sandstorm, but the result was identical. American M1A1 tanks engaged Iraqi T-72s at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters using thermal sights, while Iraqi optical sights struggled to acquire targets beyond 2,000 meters in desert haze. The battle began at 3:09 p.m. when lead elements of 1st Armored Division detected Iraqi armor in defensive positions along a ridgeline. The division's tanks, over 200 M1A1 Abrams, deployed and engaged. Iraqi T-72s returned fire, but their rounds either fell short or struck American armor without penetrating. Chobham composite armor defeated every Iraqi penetrator that hit. Meanwhile, American depleted uranium rounds punched through T-72 turrets with every impact. In 4 hours of continuous combat, 1st Armored Division destroyed 186 Iraqi tanks, 127 armored personnel carriers, 34 air defense vehicles, 7 artillery pieces, and uncounted trucks and support vehicles. The division lost 0 tanks to enemy fire. One M1A1 was destroyed by friendly fire when an American tank mistakenly engaged another M1 in the confusion of battle. This remained the pattern throughout Desert Storm. The only M1 Abrams lost to tank fire were victims of friendly fire, not enemy action. Iraqi crews, witnessing the destruction of their comrades without being able to effectively return fire, began abandoning their vehicles. Thermal imaging footage recorded by American tanks showed Iraqi crews climbing out of T-72s and running across the desert, fleeing on foot rather than remaining in tanks that had become death traps. Some T-72s never fired a shot. Crews heard the explosions of neighboring tanks, realized they were under attack by enemies they couldn't see, and abandoned their positions before American guns engaged them. The technological failures plaguing Iraqi armor were comprehensive. The T-72's optical sights, designed for clear-day engagements, couldn't function in sandstorms, haze, or darkness. Iraqi crews fought blind, while American thermal sights saw clearly. The ammunition difference was equally devastating. Iraqi T-72s fired steel penetrators that couldn't defeat Chobham armor, while American depleted uranium rounds punched through T-72 protection with ease. The density advantage of depleted uranium over steel created a penetration gap that Soviet designers hadn't anticipated. Iraqi tankers firing at M1 Abrams watched their rounds bounce harmlessly off American armor, while every American round that struck a T-72 achieved a kill. The fire control disparity made the engagement even more one-sided. American laser, rangefinders, and ballistic computers produced instant, accurate firing solutions, while Iraqi crews relied on optical range estimation and manual calculations. By the time an Iraqi gunner calculated range and adjusted elevation, the target had moved. American gunners simply lased, centered crosshairs, and fired. The computer handled everything else. First-round hit probability for American crews exceeded 90%. Iraqi first-round hits were perhaps 20% at best. The stabilization gap allowed American tanks to shoot accurately while moving at 30 miles per hour. Iraqi T-72s, lacking effective stabilization, had to stop to fire accurately, standard Soviet doctrine. This meant Iraqi tanks became stationary targets while American armor maneuvered freely, shooting on the move. The tactical implications were enormous. American tanks could charge Iraqi positions, firing continuously while advancing, while Iraqi crews had to choose between shooting inaccurately or stopping to aim, and stopping meant certain destruction by the advancing American force. Training differences compounded technological disadvantages. American crews had trained for months on simulators and live fire ranges, achieving proficiency that Iraqi tankers, with minimal training and live fire practice, couldn't match. American crew coordination was seamless. Commander acquired targets and directed engagement. Gunner executed firing solution. Loader prepared follow-up rounds. Iraqi crews, less practiced and operating under extreme stress, made mistakes that cost them their lives. The crew survivability difference highlighted divergent design philosophies. The M1 Abrams separated ammunition storage in the rear turret bustle behind blowout panels designed to vent explosions away from the crew compartment. If an enemy round penetrated the ammunition storage, the explosion vented outward and upward rather than into the fighting compartment. This saved crew lives even in the rare penetrations that occurred. The T-72's automatic loader stored ammunition in a carousel around the turret base, directly beneath the crew. Any penetration that struck this ammunition caused catastrophic explosion that killed the crew instantly and blew the turret off the hull, the signature kill seen repeatedly throughout Desert Storm. Iraqi tankers knew this vulnerability. Watching turrets fly off, destroyed T-72s sent psychological messages that no amount of courage could overcome. Your tank will kill you if hit, and you will be hit because you can't see or engage the enemy effectively. By the time the 100-hour ground war ended on February 28th, coalition forces had destroyed over 2,000 Iraqi tanks. The M1 Abrams fleet, nearly 2,000 tanks deployed, had lost 23 vehicles total. 0 were destroyed by enemy tank fire. 17 were lost to friendly fire in the confusion of rapid armored warfare. 6 were destroyed by mines or improvised explosive devices. Not a single M1 Abrams was destroyed in tank versus tank combat. The kill ratio was effectively infinite. Iraqi tank crews who survived provided assessments to coalition intelligence officers. The consistent theme was shock at the technological disparity. They couldn't see American tanks until too late. Their guns couldn't penetrate American armor. Their optical sights were useless in weather that didn't slow American thermal imaging. Their training hadn't prepared them for enemies who could shoot accurately while moving at high speed. The battles weren't contests, they were slaughters. The legacy of Desert Storm tank combat reshaped armor warfare doctrine worldwide. The M1 Abrams had proven itself the most capable main battle tank in existence, defeating Soviet-designed opponents so decisively that the debate about American versus Soviet tank design philosophy was settled permanently. Soviet emphasis on cheap mass production, adequate firepower, and minimal crew protection had been defeated by American focus on quality, technology, and crew survivability. Russian military analysts studying Desert Storm outcomes understood their tank designs were obsolete. The T-72, which Soviet planners had believed could compete with Western tanks, couldn't survive against American armor and fire control systems. This recognition drove Russian development of the T-90 in the 1990s, incorporating improved fire control, better armor, and thermal imaging, but even the T-90 remained inferior to upgraded M1A2 variants. The M1 Abrams continued serving as America's primary main battle tank through subsequent conflicts. During Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 and the Afghanistan campaign, M1 tanks faced irregular warfare threats rather than opposing armor. But the platform proved adaptable to urban combat and counterinsurgency operations. Continuous upgrades produced the M1A2 System Enhancement Package variants, incorporating improved electronics, better armor packages, and enhanced situational awareness systems. The Battle of 73 Easting became required study at military academies worldwide. Captain McMaster, who would retire as Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster after distinguished service, including as National Security Advisor, wrote extensively about the engagement's tactical lessons. The battle demonstrated that technological superiority, combined with superior training and bold tactics, could achieve victories so one-sided that casualties remained minimal despite aggressive offensive action. For Iraq, the tank battles of Desert Storm represented complete failure of Soviet armored doctrine and technology. Iraqi armor, which had performed adequately against Iranian forces using similar equipment, was revealed as obsolete when facing American systems designed a generation ahead. The T-72 tanks that Iraq had believed would anchor its defense became burning hulks across the Kuwaiti desert, destroyed by enemies Iraqi crews never saw. In the thermal image darkness of desert sandstorms and the clear desert afternoons where haze defeated optical sights, M1 Abrams crews achieved what Soviet tank designers had thought impossible: consistent first-round kills at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters while maneuvering at combat speed. The range difference between American and Iraqi effective engagement, 1,200 meters, represented more than a technical specification. It represented the gap between 1970s Soviet design philosophy and 1990s American technology, between minimal crew training and professional excellence, between adequate protection and superior survivability. Iraq had fielded tanks designed for Soviet armored doctrine from the 1970s. Tactics refined through decades of European-focused war planning. America brought technology from the 1990s, operated by crews trained to standards that wouldn't become common worldwide until the 2000s. The range difference wasn't 1,200 meters. It was 2 decades of innovation, investment, and institutional excellence that created a weapon system Iraqi forces had no capability to defeat. For 4 days in February 1991, that gap was measured in thousands of destroyed Iraqi tanks and 0 American tank losses to enemy fire.